Starting now, this is Real People. Real issues. Real news. Real people.
I'm Stephanie Allensworth, and this is Real People.
This is Real People.
Hi, welcome to Real People. I'm Stephanie Allensworth. My guest today is a woman that I met just recently at an essential oils training session. And her story was so compelling to me, I knew I had to have her on the show. Please welcome Michele Jansen.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming, and on such short notice, too. So, and your story is that you have polycystic kidney disease, and this is something that has been inherited through your family. Your whole family has it, and there's been transplants and health issues, and you also are facing a kidney transplant yourself.
Yes, as a matter of fact, it does run in my family. I grew up in a family of 5 children. I'm the number 5. I have 3 older brothers and a sister. And unfortunately, my mother was an only child. She developed polycystic kidneys she inherited from her father. And it's a 50-50 chance of passing it on. My mother is quite an unlucky person. And so she inherited it. She passed it on to 2 of us. Out of the 5 of us, 2 of us have the polycystic kidney disease. And my brother is, he's 6 years older than I am, and he has had a transplant in his mid-40s. He got a transplant. He was on dialysis for about a year, and he was very lucky to find a perfect match. And he's had his kidney for about 25 years. I have, this disease is very strange in that it can vary from person to person, even within the same family. So I didn't really need to have any kind of treatment at all until I was probably 50, when I started to get high blood pressure. And then when I was in my mid-50s is when I started dialysis. So I've been on dialysis since 2015, and I've been on a waiting list for a kidney for about 5.5 years. When I went on dialysis, my kidneys were functioning at about 10%.
Oh, wow, that's low.
Yeah. And you'd be surprised at how little function you can live on. Unfortunately for my mother, there was no treatment. She died in 1964. I was 6 years old. And it really did affect my life totally, because I really looked at life in a very different way. I was raised by my father and my grandmother. My father, unfortunately, was so grief-stricken. He really was sort of a stoic kind of guy and didn't really have. So I feel like when I say I'm raised by my grandmother, it's not that my father wasn't there. It's that my grandmother became my mother, and so. Luckily for me, I felt really lucky to have that. But like I said, for my mother, it was a death sentence. And I think of her very much, because it must have been really so difficult for her to have 5 children, the smallest 6 years old, and to know that you wouldn't be there to raise them.
Well, let me ask you this, because isn't there a lot of risk involved being pregnant while you have a kidney disease?
Well, the other issue is that my parents were both very Catholic. So being pregnant was very important. On the farm, having children, there was no, I mean, if you had children, if you're going to get married, you're going to have children. There's really no issue around that. I decided I did want to have children, and I had 2 children, even though I knew I had already been diagnosed with polycystic kidneys before I became pregnant. I just decided that it's a 50-50 chance of passing it on. I felt that modern technology had advanced far enough to protect me and my kidneys. I did have some issues both times I was pregnant, but so far, fingers crossed, neither of my children have it. It doesn't skip, they say it doesn't skip generations. So if my kids don't have it, it stops.
Awesome. Okay.
So let's all keep our fingers crossed.
Your kids are
my son is 32 and my daughter is 29.
Okay.
So I guess there is a slight possibility that they could still be diagnosed. I've always recommended that they don't get a test for it because of insurance issues. They both are employed full time, but there's still a lot of issues around insurance, and so I say don't take any chances. Just be healthy. Just eat well, exercise, take care of yourself, and that's really all you can do. Even if you knew you had the polycystic kidney disease, that's pretty much all you can do at that point anyway.
Okay, tell us what exactly polycystic kidneys are.
Good question. Polycystic kidneys are basically, it's a genetic disease that is passed on, like I said, a 50-50 chance of passing it on to the next generation. And basically your kidneys develop water-filled, fluid-filled cysts that grow and grow and grow until they take over the cysts and the kidney, they affect my brain a little bit. So I have a hard time sometimes focusing and finding the right words. But so they take over the kidney, and eventually the kidney stops functioning, and the only treatment is a transplant or dialysis. Some of the symptoms are high blood pressure, blood in the urine, pain issues.
In your back?
Yes, I keep touching the mic, sorry. I am very lucky in that I don't have a lot of pain issues, but there are a lot of polycystic kidney patients out there in terrible pain every day in the early stages of their disease. And so I feel lucky that way that I really haven't experienced that kind of pain at all. So it really varies from person to person.
And it's both kidneys?
Yes, it is both kidneys. Now, if I get a new kidney from someone, either a living donor or a deceased donor, and that's how I would find on the waiting list is you find a kidney through a deceased donor, someone who is willing to have on their driver's license that they will be a donor. Everyone should do that. But basically what happens is I get a new kidney, and the new kidney does not get the polycystic kidneys because it's a genetic thing. Okay. So the new kidneys will stay healthy.
So the other one can't transfer it?
Correct.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's good news. And they don't always take out so the kidneys get very large. That's the other thing. Sometimes people have a difficult time just with their lungs. It can encroach on your lungs. A normal size kidney is about the size of a fist, and a polycystic kidney can be the size of a football.
Oh, wow. 2
footballs inside yourself. A lot of times, too, there are other issues with other organs. So I also have polycystic liver disease, which doesn't really affect my liver function, luckily, but my liver is huge. So I do have a lot of stuff going on.
It's like,
hello,
up in here.
I've got these twins. So that's how it feels sometimes. I have like twins, and I feel pregnant. I feel like I feel very big. And so they call it the PKD belly. They call it the PKD belly, and my mother had it, and I didn't really realize what that was all about until I'm an adult, and there it is. So, yeah, it can affect if you have a transplant, if they can find room, sometimes they'll have to take the kidneys out. Like with my brother, they didn't take his kidneys out. He still has his native kidneys.
Even though they're enormous?
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't they still hurt?
They don't hurt him. He doesn't have pain issues. Yes, that would be one of the reasons they might take out a kidney if you're having issues with pain, if you're having a lot of urinary tract issues, if you're having a lot of infections or kidney stones, then they would consider taking out the kidney.
So,
or if it's encroaching on your lungs or something like that.
But I'm trying to wrap my head around what it would be like inside your system to have 3 kidneys and 2 that are oversized.
That are too big.
And so, but you have this one connected now, and does it stay connected? Do they connect it to the other kidney? Or because it doesn't seem like right. They should take that sucker out.
I agree. Well, and I do sometimes, but the Mayo Clinic just started taking out kidneys when they do the transplant. They never did it until about a year ago, and it was not recommended that the kidneys come out the same time as the transplant because it's a dangerous operation. And the kidney I think they take that out of the back and put it in the front. That's the other issue. So sometimes, but they may have changed it so that it comes out through laparoscopic surgery.
Oh, sure, now they can do that.
So they can do that. Plus, if you take out your native kidneys, even though they have a tiny bit of function, they still might have a tiny bit of function. If something were to happen to that transplanted kidney, you really don't have anything to fall back on.
I see.
You'd have to go back on
sense.
dialysis.
Yeah.
So there are risks involved with taking out the native kidneys. But most polycystic kidney patients just want those things to go.
Yeah, especially if they've been painful.
Yes,
and
especially.
if they're diseased, it seems like there seems to be more risk with them than without. But
they can cause other problems. Yeah, that's right. So it varies from patient to patient.
And so when you say you've got the liver now going on, is that something that is from the same genetic issue, or did that?
I think so. Yeah. So basically, I could have cysts on a bunch of different organs. They're finding that it's not just the kidneys; it's your system. And I don't know a lot about that part of it, but I've been reading up more and more that there could be cysts on my ovaries or on my uterus and different areas. I'm not really having any issues around those kinds of, I'm not having any problems around those kinds of issues, but, and my liver is functioning perfectly normal, so I don't have to worry about a liver transplant. However, I do have to stay away from fatty foods. And I found that out the hard way. I actually went to the PKD website, and they had a nice little PDF on polycystic liver disease. And I'm like, hey, maybe I should check that out since I've got that too. So I take a look at it, and it was the day that I went to a restaurant and I had some delicious clams in a parm sauce, and it was delicious. But I was feeling kind of not well. And then I read that you should stay away from fatty foods. And I mean, it was just like oozing butter and Parmesan and just all this fat. So that was not a good thing to eat that night. So I've learned to stay away from, so my diet is such that I really have to, that's another issue. So before I was on dialysis, I had to be on a low potassium and low phosphorus diet. Your
low
kidneys,
potassium,
right?
Oh.
And so and low protein, because your kidneys just don't process those things very well. And if you have too much potassium in your diet, it's really bad for your heart and different parts of your system. And it's the same with phosphorus. If you have too much phosphorus in your diet, it's bad for your bones and your heart.
But
and
likewise, you need enough.
Right, and so basically, but my kidneys process it, and so I always have too much.
Okay.
So until I was on dialysis, so for years I was like, no tomatoes, no spinach, no leafy greens, strawberries, all these things, all these healthy things that anything that's pretty much any vegetable that's bright colored has a lot of minerals and nutrients in it, a lot of potassium, which is good for most people, bad for me. So then I'm on dialysis, and they said, you're going to have to increase your potassium. I'm like, what? So I'm like,
Butter? I can have butter. No, that's fat. Sorry.
Yeah, no butter. But now I can have tomatoes again, and spinach, and all the leafy greens. But my phosphorus levels are a trick. That's been really a struggle. And I'm on 2 different kinds of phosphate binders that basically take the phosphorus and bypass the kidney. They bind it up,
Sure.
and so that's a challenge, because phosphate is in dairy, nuts, legumes, chocolate, and so my trifecta after I have my transplant is going to be, I don't know if I can say this, peanut butter parfait.
Yeah.
Because it's chocolate, nuts, and dairy. And I'm like, I'm having that, man.
I'm having that,
I
man.
miss that so much. I miss it.
Do you know where you are on the list, on the waiting list?
Well, it doesn't really work that way.
Okay, right, because you have to match.
It's an algorithm where when a kidney becomes available, the computer, sort of just sits there and says, okay, how long is the person on the list? What's their blood type? It looks for all these things to match.
Right.
So there's 5 points that match it, and I get blood work done every month, and every 3 months I get blood work done for my antibodies to make sure that those are a match as well, because there's different kinds of antibody that I have and that you have, and they would need to match.
Right.
If you were going to donate a kidney to me, those things would need to match, so I wouldn't reject the kidney. I always found that ironic too, because this new kidney is something that's going to help my body, and yet it's a foreign object that's coming into my body, and my body wants to reject it.
Yeah.
So when I do get a transplant, I'll have to be on just gobs of different kinds of anti-rejection drugs.
Oh boy.
Which at first will squash my immune system. So for a few months, I really probably can't be around people. I have to wash all my fruits and vegetables very carefully, and can't have sprouts because you can't wash sprouts. But anyway, so that's so diet is an important part of my lifestyle now. I feel like I spend a lot of time on meal preparation and food preparation, because I can't really eat prepared foods or restaurant foods as much as I used to, because of I don't know what's in there, and it's tiresome to say, can you tell me what's in this?
Yeah, right.
How did you make this? What's in your sausage?
Well, since I met you at an essential oils class, how do you integrate the oils into your maintenance, I guess?
I just started using them in the last year or so, and part of the problem with the phosphate binders is it messes totally with my digestive system. And so I got something called Happy Tummy, and that has helped quite a lot. You literally just rub it on your tummy, and it helps you stay regular, and it just really helps with the digestive system, yeah. And the kind of dialysis I'm on is peritoneal dialysis, which is a fluid exchange in my abdomen. So I have a tube coming out of my stomach, and I plug into a machine every night, and basically every hour and a half or so, 2 milliliters of fluid flow in and out of my body to flush the toxins out. And it's just as effective as hemodialysis, which is the blood exchange.
Right.
So I don't sleep that well.
No doubt. Oh my gosh.
I don't sleep all that well. I have a hard time falling asleep, and I get restless leg, which is pretty common with dialysis too. So I've been taking some of the sleep oils, and that's helped me fall asleep. And it does, and just staying asleep has been an issue. So that's how I've been using some of the oils.
Well, how in the world are you keeping such a good attitude? Because I swear, I mean, a lot of people would be like, oh, wah,
poor me.
Wah. But you just seem to be like, hey, this is my life, and we're educating people about it, so which is good.
Yes.
and there's probably a lot of others out there with the same thing going on. Do you have any idea what the count is?
Yes, it's something like, well, it is the most common life-threatening genetic disease, or one of the most common life-threatening genetic diseases, and it affects 600,000 Americans and 12.4 million people worldwide. Wow. So it's really more, and most people that you see, you know, if they have polycystic kidneys, they may not have treatment at that point in their life. They probably, most people will need dialysis after 50, most people. Not everybody, some earlier. My brother needed it earlier, and he had a transplant much earlier as well. My mother died when she was 46.
Oh boy. So
she was quite young. However, it does vary from person to person. And I swear at my machine sometimes. But you know, it's water. So sometimes I don't know if you, I can't think of the name of this Japanese scientist. He took pictures of snowflakes and water crystals and said ugly things to them, and the crystals were ugly. So I really, I interviewed him one time, or I shouldn't say interviewed him. I went to a conference with him one time and did a story about him, and it just really struck me that it's important. This is a fluid exchange in my body, so I can't put any negative energy into it.
Right.
I have to put nothing but positive energy into it and gratitude. It's not that difficult for me to be grateful. I think about my mother who didn't have treatment. So I'm grateful that I have treatment. I have to, I guess I just have to be. Now, I definitely have, yesterday I got really super depressed. I do have depression. I have a lot of anxiety. I get panic attacks. I just started getting panic attacks. And I didn't know what it was. So I have my issues, and it's a pretty common thing for people to get depressed with any chronic disease, because you don't really know what's going to happen,
right? And
you could die. Without my treatment, I would die. So I'm just grateful for the treatment, and I try to stay positive. And thank you for saying that. I'm not always Miss Sunshine. Trust me. I get irritated a lot.
Getting irritated is a human thing too. It's not just set aside for people with a disease.
Yes.
So me, I never get irritated.
No.
But we have, I think there's a lot to be said. Like you were talking about the water, and I can't remember the guy's name either. I want to say it's Hashimoto or something.
Yeah.
But here's what I actually do. I have a 2-liter glass jug that I fill with water, and I have joy written on one side and love on the other. And because that whole scientific thing was, even with live plants, if you talk harshly to your house plants or put "you are ugly" or "hate" or something signs on them that are negative energy signs, they don't thrive. But if you have the love and joy, and it's so scientific that it's so easy to prove it, because even the kids in junior high and high school are doing these experiments now. And because I've seen...
So interesting.
And it is really, really true that water responds to positivity. Plants respond to positivity. Our bodies respond to positivity. So try to keep up the good fight and keep up the good cheer, and maybe put some joy into your water.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And I don't mean vodka.
That invisible joy that doesn't have a smell.
It does, though.
But no, I'm also in this Facebook group called Living with Polycystic Kidneys. And I have to say, it's a very good support group. Sometimes it's depressing. Because there's a lot of really sad people who are really, really struggling. And some people are it just breaks my heart that they're young and they have little children and they have all this pain and they don't know what to do and they're scared. And so sometimes I just have to kind of stay away from it because it's too hard. But other days I'm able to offer, somebody something a little bit uplifting, and
Right.
so overall it's a very good support group, and it's a great place for information, and you know, in lieu of having an in-person support group, you know, like we all used to have back in the day, I think these online support groups are really, really valuable. I would really recommend that people do that.
There's no face-to-face things here in Minneapolis?
There are. Well, there used to be. There's PKD Foundation chapters,
Okay.
and there used to be a stronger chapter here. We don't get together anymore, but yeah, there used to be. That was a little depressing too, to be perfectly honest, because I was pretty healthy when I was going to those meetings, and I was hearing about aneurysms and that, which can be a side effect.
Right.
All these things, transplants, rejection, cancer, from the steroids that people had to take. So I was like, oh, why am I coming to these things? It's so depressing. But one of the big things that the chapter does is have a walk, and that's the big fundraiser that happens in September. It's the Walk for PKD. It's their annual fundraiser. It happens in quite a few cities across the country. So people just literally raise money to find a cure. And all of the money raised in Minnesota actually goes to research in Minnesota. That's the beauty of it.
That's awesome.
We're so lucky to live in the same state as Mayo Clinic.
Yeah.
I was involved in a study there, a PKD study, where I was able to work with a specialist who knew, he was a PKD specialist. And so I knew more about PKD than my general practitioner did.
I'm going to have to cut you off because we're running out of time.
We are. Oh my God, that went fast. Sorry.
It did. But I want to thank you for being here. And
well, let me real quick say about the walk.
Okay.
It's
yes, please.
It's Saturday, September 14th. Registration 8:30 a.m. And you can find out more information at pkdcure.org.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Well, you keep up the good fight.
Thanks.
And keep up the joy within yourself. With that, I want to say thank you for joining us here. Thank you for keeping it real. I'm Stephanie Allensworth here with Michele Jansen. Have a good night. We're also streaming on YouTube, so check us out there. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It's free.